There's a moment that almost everyone in America has experienced in the past 2 years. You walk into a fast food restaurant out of habit. You order the same thing you've ordered 100 times before. And when the total pops up on the screen, you pause. Not because you're broke. Not because you didn't expect prices to rise. But because something feels wrong. $12. $14. $15. For food that used to be the definition of, I don't want to think, I just want to eat. That pause, that hesitation, is the sound of an entire business model breaking. According to surveys cited across industry commentary, nearly 80% of Americans now describe fast food as a luxury, not a cheap necessity. Let that sink in. Fast food, designed explicitly to serve people with less time and less money, has crossed the psychological line into discretionary spending. And once that happens, the damage is almost impossible to reverse. Fast food was never about culinary excellence. Everyone knows that. It was about calories per dollar, speed per minute, and reliability per paycheck. For decades, fast food served 3 critical roles in American life. It fed working-class families cheaply. It employed teenagers and low-skill workers. And it acted as the default option when energy, time, or money ran out. That's why these chains were considered recession-proof. When money got tight, people traded down. They didn't stop eating, they stopped eating better. But something unprecedented happened after 2020. Fast food didn't stay at the bottom of the price ladder. It climbed. Prices rose faster than inflation, faster than wages, and in many cases faster than casual sit-down restaurants. Industry data referenced in the scripts shows that the average fast food menu item now costs roughly twice what it did a decade ago. And that single fact quietly destroys the entire recession-proof argument. Because when fast food stops being cheap, it stops being a fallback. Fast food companies didn't collapse because of rich customers. They collapsed because their core customers disappeared. Earnings calls from McDonald's, Wendy's, Domino's, and others reveal the same pattern. Low-income consumers pulled back first, then middle-income consumers followed. McDonald's reported one of its worst U.S. same-store sales declines outside of the pandemic, and executives openly admitted that traffic from households under $75,000 dropped sharply, and then spread upward. This matters more than people realize. Fast food margins rely on volume. Not luxury pricing. Not brand loyalty fantasies. Just volume. Once low-income households stop showing up, the entire machine destabilizes. High-income customers can't replace them, because fast food was never designed to extract luxury spending. A $15 Big Mac combo doesn't suddenly become a premium experience just because it's expensive. It becomes a bad deal. Look at what's happening across the country. Hundreds of Burger King locations closed. Over 500 McDonald's stores shuttered in the U.S. Thousands of Subway locations quietly disappeared. Pizza Hut abandoning dine-in entirely in many states. Boston Market collapsing into near extinction. These aren't startup failures. These are legacy institutions unraveling in real time. And the pattern is eerily consistent. First, prices rise. Then foot traffic falls. Then franchisees start bleeding. Then corporate blames, changing consumer preferences. And finally, stores close, especially in lower-income neighborhoods. Which tells you something important: this isn't about Americans suddenly becoming health-conscious or gourmet-obsessed. It's about affordability snapping. There's a popular narrative that fast food failed because it became soulless. Gray buildings. Touchscreens instead of people. Sterile interiors that feel like waiting rooms. All of that is true. But it's secondary. The real collapse happened when fast food lost alignment with its customers' economic reality. Chains responded to rising costs, labor, rent, ingredients, delivery fees, by raising prices and shrinking portions. But they underestimated something critical. Consumers aren't stupid. They do mental math. When a fast food meal costs nearly the same as a casual restaurant, or more than groceries for multiple meals, people don't complain forever. They just leave. That's why delivery orders are falling while carryout rises. That's why people are cooking at home again. That's why even Domino's admits customers still want pizza, just not convenience at any price. Fast food companies assumed that habit equals loyalty. They assumed people would keep coming because they always had. But habit only survives when it's reinforced by value. Once fast food crossed into, "I need to think about this" territory, the spell broke. Worse, some companies tried to paper over the damage with gimmicks, limited-time offers, influencer meals. Buy now pay later for burritos. Yes, that's real. That wasn't innovation, but desperate move to attract customers. When consumers start financing lunch, the system is already rotten. What's happening to fast food is not an isolated collapse. It's a canary in the coal mine for something bigger. Fast food is where economic stress shows up first, because it sits at the intersection of wages, prices, and daily survival. When even fast food stops working as an affordable option, it means wages didn't keep up. Costs overshot reality. And the middle and working class quietly lost purchasing power. Fast food didn't fail America. America outgrew what fast food could charge, and fast food didn't notice until it was too late. Whenever a fast food chain starts bleeding customers, the corporate response is always the same. They talk about bringing back value. They roll out a $5 meal. They revive an old menu item and hope nostalgia does the rest. And for a few weeks, traffic bumps slightly. Then it dies again. Because the problem is not that Americans forgot about value menus. The problem is that the math underneath them no longer works. Ingredient costs are up. Labor costs are up. Rent is up. Delivery platforms take a cut that didn't exist 15 years ago. According to industry commentary, eating away from home is roughly 30% more expensive than in 2019, even after inflation adjustments. That means a value menu today is not a business strategy, it's a temporary subsidy. And subsidies don't scale unless someone else absorbs the loss. Franchisees know this. That's why so many of them are walking away. Here's the part that rarely makes headlines. Most fast food locations are not owned by the corporations whose logos you see. They're owned by franchisees, small business operators who signed contracts expecting stable margins and predictable volume. That deal is now broken. Franchisees are squeezed from both sides. Corporate raises supply costs and fees. Consumers refuse higher prices. That's why lawsuits are piling up. Why operators accuse corporate of overselling growth and undersupporting reality. Why closures are spreading fastest among older, lower-income neighborhoods where volume can't recover. Fast food didn't just lose customers. It lost its middle layer, the people willing to absorb risk in exchange for steady demand. Once franchisees stop believing the numbers, expansion ends. And when expansion ends, decline accelerates. There's a deeper truth hiding here. Fast food worked because America once had predictable wages, stable schedules, cheap land, low medical debt, and enough disposable income to treat food as a convenience, not a calculation. That world is gone. Today, households juggle higher rent, higher insurance costs, higher transportation costs, student loan repayments restarting, and record consumer debt. In that environment, even a small price increase changes behavior. That's why surveys show over 60% of Americans now report being shocked by fast food bills and deliberately cutting back. This isn't a boycott, but triage. Some analysts argue that fast food can pivot upward, target higher-income consumers, improve branding, lean into premium fast casual, but this misunderstands the core issue. High-income consumers already have options. They're not emotionally attached to fast food. They don't rely on it. And they don't eat it frequently enough to replace volume losses. Fast food was never designed to extract margin from the rich. It was designed to extract frequency from the many. Once frequency collapses, no amount of branding saves the model. You can't build a mass-market business on occasional indulgence. For years, companies justified price hikes by selling convenience. Delivery apps. Mobile ordering. Drive-through automation. But consumers did the math. Delivery fees plus tips plus inflated menu prices turn a $9 meal into $18. And suddenly, convenience looks like a scam. That's why Domino's openly admits delivery orders are falling while carryout rises. People didn't stop wanting pizza. They stopped wanting to pay a premium to avoid putting on shoes. This matters because fast food margins increasingly depend on digital convenience, not food itself. Once convenience becomes optional again, the revenue stack collapses. What makes fast food important isn't burgers or tacos. It's timing. Fast food is usually the last place to break in a downturn. If it's breaking now, it means the stress is already deep. Historically, luxury weakens first. Then discretionary retail. Then restaurants. Fast food used to be the floor. Now even the floor is cracking. That's why this story isn't really about food. It's about a system where prices adjust faster than wages, costs are passed down, never up, and affordability becomes a moving target no one is allowed to reach. Fast food just happens to be the industry honest enough to show the damage early. If this feels familiar, it should. Healthcare raised prices until insurance masked the pain. Housing raised prices until debt stretched the timeline. Education raised prices until loans normalized lifelong repayment. Fast food tried the same move. Raise prices. Shrink portions. Blame consumers. Add financing. But unlike those other sectors, fast food had no policy protection. No mandatory demand. No long-term contracts. So consumers did the one thing they can still do. They walked away. Fast food won't disappear entirely. But what survives will look different: smaller footprints, fewer locations, higher prices, and less emotional attachment. The era of cheap, fast, reliable food for everyone is over. What replaces it isn't better food, it's less default consumption. And that should worry policymakers far more than investors. Because when even fast food stops functioning as a pressure valve, economic stress has nowhere left to go. Fast food didn't become greedy overnight. It followed the same logic every other industry followed. Raise prices. Protect margins. Assume customers will adjust. This time, they didn't. And once Americans learn they can live without something they relied on for decades, that lesson doesn't unlearn itself. Fast food isn't dying because people hate it. It's dying because it no longer fits the economy it was built for. And that economy, the one built on affordable shortcuts, is disappearing right alongside it.